Hey everybody, Dr. Glenn here, and welcome to Dr. Glenn Live, Tuesday at 12:30. So today we're going to be talking about thyroid function. Somebody wrote in last week and asked if I would talk about thyroid, and there's a lot of things you can talk about relative to thyroid, but this is my favorite topic, and the reason is as you go through this, the light starts to come on quite often for a lot of people. So if type in the chat box if you're here, let me see who's here. And also, if what we're going to go over today rings a bell with you, I'd love to see your comments in the chat box, and I'll do my best to answer your questions as we go along. So let's talk about thyroid and thyroid hormone conversion, because this is where a lot of the problems tend to happen. So if you look at this diagram I have up here, you can see that you have something called the hypothalamus, and the hypothalamus is up in the middle of your brain, and it's like the air traffic control person out at the airport. It's sitting up there and it's looking over everything that's going on, and it's deciding, what to do, who turns left, land, take off, taxi, pull away, pull up, whatever. Keeps everything going in your body and keeps things from running into each other, which is kind of important. Now, we know that behind every good administrative person is an even better administrative assistant. And so the hypothalamus, its administrative assistant is the pituitary gland. And it sits right underneath it in your brain. And so relative to thyroid, the hypothalamus makes some stuff called thyroid regulating hormone, or you can see that there, TRH, and that tells the pituitary to turn the volume up or down on the thyroid. So the pituitary makes TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone. We're going to come back to TSH in just a minute, and if you had a chance to see my special report last week on TSH, we're going to go over that just a little bit. But I want you to think of TSH like this. TSH is like the volume. See if I can get my hand to where you can. It's like the volume knob on your radio. And when you make more TSH, it's like turning the volume up on your radio. And when you want less thyroid, then you turn the volume down. Now, thyroid function goes up and down based on what the body perceives your needs are. Thyroid hormone, TSH, is not a stable number. And this is where so much of the treatment of thyroid problems today is misguided. It's based on an idea that came out of about 1977, 75, 77, when they thought that TSH was the key to getting the thyroid working properly. Actually, TSH, as you can see here, is not even made by the thyroid. It's made by the pituitary gland. And TSH goes up and down all the time. So let me give you an example. Let's say you've got a big project at work and you're working nights and you're working weekends, and you're burning the candle on both ends, and if you're a mom, you're raising kids and taking care of a house at the same time, you need a lot more thyroid. And so what happens is TSH goes up. And your project lasts a couple of weeks, and then the project's over. It's time to chill out. You get a vacation, you go for a cruise, something like that. Well, TSH will go down, and that is normal. TSH goes up and down, and that is normal. So as you can see here, the thyroid makes basically two things. It makes some T4 and it makes some T3. And these numbers that you see, 93% for T4 and 7% for T3, these are normal values. However, the problem is this. T3 is the active form of the hormone and T4 is inactive. So what we have to do is convert the T4 into T3. And I've always used this analogy because I think most people can understand it. Think of T4 like it's crude oil. And crude oil comes out of the ground, gets pumped up, and then it has to be taken to the refinery and turned into gasoline so that you can actually put it in your car and use it. So your body does not use T4, but it makes lots of it, but it uses T3, and you have to convert the T4 into T3. Now, if you got 93% T4, you got a lot of T4 sitting around, you got to get it converted. So what happens is this T4 gets taken down to your liver. And in the liver, if everything is working like it's supposed to, then you will convert about 60% of that T4 into T3. This is good because now you're starting to get the stuff you can use, that is the T3. Now here's where the first little wrench can be thrown into the whole thing and things can start to go wrong. And that is, you see these things over on the side there, you got 5, that's called 5' deiodinase, that's an enzyme. Anything that has an ACE on the end of it is an enzyme, okay? And then you have selenium, that's a mineral. You have serotonin and dopamine. Now serotonin and dopamine, we've talked about those a few weeks ago. Those are neurotransmitters. And these 4 things are called cofactors. And cofactors are what the liver needs to be able to actually convert the T4 into T3. So think of it like this. Let's say you're building a house and the cofactors are like the nails. You got to have nails to put stuff together. They're not, they're not glamorous. You don't go shopping to pick out the prettiest nails, but you can have doors and windows and cabinets and all kinds of stuff. But if you don't have any nails, you're not building a house. And so if you don't have these cofactors, you're not converting T4 to T3. Now the problem arises when you realize that serotonin and dopamine are primarily made in your gut. Now, so here's the situation. Everything's going along just fine. You're making everything like you're supposed to. You convert 60% of that T4 into T3, but that still leaves a lot of it left to convert, doesn't it? So what happens is it gets sent over to your gut, and in your gut you convert another 20% of that T4 into T3. This is really, really good. This is what's supposed to happen. Now, if we're having gut trouble, and so many, if you're having gut trouble, signal it to me. I'd like to see how many people are having gut trouble today. Just type it in the chat box there. But if you're having gut trouble, not only are you having problems there, but you're also going to have trouble making serotonin and dopamine, which means if your gut isn't working properly, it can't convert its share of T4 to T3, and it's not making the serotonin and dopamine that your liver needs to convert its share of T4 into T3. And so what happens is you end up not converting enough T4 into T3, so you end up with low hypothyroid symptoms. And it doesn't have anything in the world to do with your TSH or anything in the world to do with your thyroid. It's because your gut isn't working properly and your liver isn't working properly. Now, look at this. You can see there where I've shown thyroid replacement hormone, and it doesn't matter if it's serotonin, not serotonin, if it's synthroid, levothyroxine, natrethroid, tyrosine, it doesn't make any difference which one it is. If you're adding in extra T4 and you don't have the ability to convert it into T3, you're still going to be hypothyroid in your symptoms when you might have plenty of T4. And one of the things, if you have thyroid problems and you've taken Armour, and you felt a little bit better, Armour is actual thyroid gland. It's ground up thyroid gland porcine, or from pigs, and so what it has is it has a little bit of T3 in it. Now, if you were to take a supplement that had some T3 in it and you were T3 deficient because you weren't converting, then what would happen? Well, you'd feel a little bit better because your T3 numbers could have gone from 7% up to 14%, let's say. You got some more T3. Now, if you've experienced a situation where you go to the doctor, they look at your TSH, they raise your thyroid, or they lower your dose or something like that, and you don't feel any difference at all, the probability is your problem isn't in your thyroid. The probability is you're not converting your T4 into T3 like you're supposed to. Now, here's the problem. there are no drugs that help you convert T4 into T3. So there isn't anything to write a prescription for. You just keep on giving patients Synthroid or levothyroxine and you don't do any better. You raise the dosage, you lower the dosage, and you still don't feel better. It's because you're not converting T4 into T3. This is why it is so unbelievably important that you run T4 and T3 numbers when you do your thyroid labs, because if you see that your T4 numbers are fine and your T3 numbers are low, then you know that you're not converting. And if you're not converting, you know that you have a problem in the liver and or in the gut. And that is really, really important. Now let me show you something else that I want to bring up something else here, because most people are not aware of this. Check out this little chart right here. I'm going to drag it down just a bit. Okay, here's a person measured their TSH on the same day every month for 7 months. No drugs, no supplements, nothing. She was taking absolutely nothing. And what you can see here is that her TSH was a little high in January, way low in February, perfect in March, not too bad in April, really high in May and June, and absolutely right smack in the middle of perfect in July. In other words, TSH goes up and down on a regular basis based on what the metabolic needs of your body is. TSH is not a stable number that you just measure periodically once every 3 months, once every 6 months, and adjust the dosage. That is so 1980s. You need to run the right labs, you need to understand what's going on, and you need to make the right decisions. So I hope that that helps you understand a little bit more about what's going on in the thyroid and why it is so very, very important to run the correct tests. Also, want to make a mention that I've picked 2 dates in September for our next workshops. On Saturday, September the 8th, I will be doing a thyroid workshop here in Reston, and if you'd like to attend that, I will be putting the links up in the Facebook page pretty soon. And on September the 15th, the following Saturday, we will be doing an autoimmune workshop also here in Reston. Both of those will be at 11 o'clock on the Saturday mornings, thyroid and then autoimmune. And they're both very good workshops, and they cover, there's a little bit of overlap because as maybe you know that the most common thyroid problem is actually Hashimoto's, which is an autoimmune disease. So there's a bit of overlap there, and we'll show you in those workshops what you can do to actually reverse these problems. So again, thanks for being here today. If you have a topic that you would like for me to cover in a future Dr. Glenn Live, please type it into the comments there. I see those, and if you type something in that comment, I get on a couple times a day and I check those, and I'll respond to your questions. I'll answer your questions as best I can, and or you can also write to me at the email address is drglennlive@gmail.com, and I would love to hear from you, and as I pick the topics for the next few weeks. So hope you have a great day today, and thank you for being here, and I will see you next week for Dr. Glenn Live. Bye.